Hi, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we will be looking at subtopic 1.3, International Competitiveness. Okay, and this is again another subtopic for topic 1, Global Interdependence. Okay, in this subtopic, as usual, we will always start with the concept of the new term. Okay, in this case, international competitiveness, and then we will be looking at determinants of international competitiveness, which means factors that can affect a country's international competitiveness level in terms of their exports. Okay, so what is international competitiveness? Usually in the exam, this is what we will be using. Okay, international competitiveness refers to the ability of a country to design, produce, and market goods and services that are better or cheaper than other countries. So basically, what we are trying to do here is to see how we can place our product in a better position in the international market. For example, if you are selling chocolates, okay, and customers goes to a mall and are exposed to wide range of chocolates. The whole shelf is filled with varieties of chocolates, brand, taste, and all. So what makes them choose your chocolates instead of other chocolates? Okay, so that would be your competitiveness level. Okay, so they may choose your product because your product uh, packaging looks better, because your product's brand is well known, because the taste of your chocolate is suitable for them, because your price is cheaper, because your chocolate is of higher quality, and so on and so forth. Whatever the reason is, those are the determinants that makes your products put your products in a better position. Okay, so why competitiveness is so important? Because competitiveness can affect your trade, how much you can export and how much you need to import. Your competitiveness level would determine that. So therefore, it will also determine your production level, your employment level, and your income of the country. Okay, if your product is more competitive, for example, if your product is more competitive, of course then you will be able to produce more because demand for your export will be higher. Yeah, so you will be able to produce more. And if your demand for your product is higher, of course more labor, more workers will be needed, and therefore unemployment rate will actually fall. Okay, now, and of course ultimately everyone will earn higher level of income. Okay, so that's how we look at uh, when we see international competitiveness. All right, next we will be looking at the determinants of international competitiveness. Okay, that means factors that can affect your level of international competitiveness of the country. Okay, so number one is the country's price level in relation to its trading partners. So if our country's price level is lower, okay, which means of course it can be seen through inflation rate. So inflation rate reflect your price level movement. Okay, or price movement. So lower inflation rate would actually mean, okay, your price of your country's product will increase at slower rate. Okay, lower inflation rate, yeah, as long as it is not negative. If it is lower, the price will still increase, but at slower rate. Okay, for example, if last year inflation rate was 2%, year one inflation rate was 2%, it will mean price will increase at 2%. Okay, but in year two, inflation rate lowered down to 1.5%. It would still mean your price would increase, but at this point, it will increase at only on average 1.5%. So price will still increase, but slower rate. Okay, so in that case, ultimately, in the long term, you would realize Australian goods and services would be cheaper. Australians exports particularly would be cheaper in the long term. Okay, so if that's the case, if your product can be cheaper, then of course your international competitiveness, IC here means international competitiveness, okay, level would increase. All right. Now, let me show you one example of this determinant. Yeah. Okay. In Australia, okay, the Australian government and RBA, they are two separate entities. These two bodies has actually has targeted inflation rate that they want to achieve, and it is the same, 2 to 3% over a business cycle. Okay, so in that sense, what it means is we want the price to increase at a stable rate. Okay, so in that case, it can actually help producers to also manage their costs, to help consumers to plan their purchase. Okay, and also, of course, you don't want your price to be too high or too low. Both ends would not be good for a country. Okay, so maintaining a relatively stable price would be good. Okay, now, so Australia in year 2020, yeah, June 2020, they have experienced a deflation of negative 0.3% deflation. Okay, now that was the first time inflation rate in Australia become negative. Okay, negative here means price reduce. Okay, like just now I've mentioned, if it is lower inflation rate, as long as it is still positive, your price will still increase, but it's just lower rate. But this one negative, so price actually uh, reduce. Okay, so it has been quite bad since in 2020, because that was the first time it turned to negative since 1998, a financial crisis in the world. Okay, now China inflation rate actually increased. Okay, so it's just some example for you to explain the relative inflation rate. You compare the two inflation rate. Okay, now the second determinants of international competitiveness is changes in the country's wage in relation to its trading partners' wage rate. Okay, so again, because you are looking at international competitiveness, that means you have to compare with another country. So we are not only looking at our country inflation rate, our country wage rate, but we need to compare with another country. That's why the word relative come into picture. Okay, so if our relative inflation rate, a relative wage rate increases, if relative wage rate increases, so it would mean compared to other country, our wage rate has been higher. Okay, so if our wage rate is higher, then our cost of production, COP here represent cost of production, would actually be higher compared to another country. If our cost of production is higher, then what will happen is producer most likely will pass the burden down to consumers by changing price. So if our cost of production is higher, of course, our price of our goods and services would be higher. So in that case, you are looking at higher price level, then your international competitiveness level would reduce. Okay, so what actually determine our wage rate? Okay, it can be the salary, okay, that the employee are receiving. Okay, it can also include what we call the non-wage cost. Okay, unit labor cost is what we pay. Non-wage cost is actually about other benefits that you are providing for your employee, okay, but it's not reflected in their salary. For example, you provide medical insurance coverage, you provide trainings, you provide car, you provide housing, whatever it is, it's not reflected in their salary, but this is a cost that has incurred in that will appear in your companies or your business cost. Okay, so and those are non-wage costs, and it will affect your entire cost of production. Okay, and it is actually part of your wage that you spend on your employee. It's just that it's not being distributed to employee or not being given to employee through their monthly salary. It's just through other benefits. Okay, but it is still a cost. Okay, now, so one example that I can show you here is based on OECD data. If you don't know what is OECD, it's okay. We will cover it in topic 2. All right, so based on OECD data, what happened is the data shows that Australia has the highest minimum wage in the world with 12.6 USD per hour. That's minimum wage. Okay, followed by some other country. Okay, so having relatively higher wage rate, it will tell you your wage rate is higher in relation to your trading partners. And so based on the storyline that I've explained, this will actually lead to lower international competitiveness. Okay, next, changes in the labor productivity. For changes in the labor productivity, you are looking at what is labor productivity. So I put a formula of labor productivity here. Labor productivity is determined by how much your labor can produce as a whole, which is your output that is ultimately being consolidated into counting your GDP. Okay, now over the average number of hours they actually work. Okay, so with 8 working hours, if they can produce more than last year, their labor productivity increases. If they cannot produce more than the previous year or previous month, instead the ultimate output that they are producing is lower with the same hours of same working hours, then productivity level can be considered reduced. Okay, so now, so if labor productivity level actually increases, your unit cost of production would reduce. Why is that so? Because when your productivity level increases, that means with the same workers, they can produce more output. Okay, with the same working hours, same workers can produce more output. But these workers, their salary, whether they are producing 2,000 unit or 3,000 unit, you are still paying them 3,000 per month, for example. But this 3,000 cost, the salary that you are paying, it can be distributed to more output. Okay, so in that case, your unit cost of production will be lower. Okay, but if you look at it from the other angle, would be a product that you produce. Let's say your company produced a mobile phone. Okay, and you want to determine price of your mobile phone. Say, okay, so when you are trying to determine the selling price of your mobile phone, you will be looking at the labor cost. You will be looking at the raw material cost and so on and so forth, other costs. So labor cost is one of it. So when it comes to labor cost, you will be looking into how long labor need to produce this product, this particular mobile phone, how long they take to produce this mobile phone. Okay, now then from there you calculate how much salary are you paying them. Okay, so from there you will be able to determine, okay, this product wage cost will be 200, for example. To produce this product, which cost itself is 200, and then you add on to other costs, raw material costs, utilities costs, and so on and so forth. Okay, so the higher the level of productivity, okay, the lower the unit cost of production. Then in that case, producers may choose to reduce price. Not to say they must reduce, but they may choose to reduce price to remain competitive. Okay, so that will be the third determinant. And the example or facts that I can share with you, again, I use OECD data. Okay, it shows Romania is the country with the highest labor productivity in the world. Okay, and Australia ranked 24 in 2010. And this ranking has improved, I think, to when I'm recording, it has improved to 17th. Okay, so international competitiveness of Australia exports would have increased because our labor productivity has improved, even though there's more room to improve. Okay, but comparatively, it has been better. Okay, changes in the exchange rate. Okay, it would be the fourth determinant. So this change here, we are looking at your exchange rate value. If you don't know what is exchange rate value, you may view the previous recordings. Okay, so when we are saying that if Australian dollar appreciates, okay, if Australian dollar appreciates, then price of Australian exports, okay, in later chapter, you will learn in detail what is export price index, what is import price index. But for now, I'll use layman term. Price of Australian exports will be more expensive, okay, in terms of foreign currency. It will be more expensive. Okay, so foreigners want to buy Australian product, they find it very expensive because Australian dollar appreciated. Okay, so in that case, our international competitiveness level would be lower. Okay, now in terms of import, when our currency appreciate, of course, we will find our import price lower. Okay, now Australia is a country that import quite a bit of capital goods. What is capital goods? For example, technology, machine. Okay, we do import quite a bit of those things. So, and when we import quite a bit of those things, and now the import price is lower because our currency appreciate, then our cost of production would be lower. It means, in layman term, it means we can buy cheaper machines from other countries because our currency is stronger. Okay, so in that case, again, companies may reduce price to remain competitive. Okay, so if they were to export whatever product they are producing using the machines that they have imported, the cost will be lower, and they export it, their competitiveness level will be higher. Okay, now one example that I can show you is Australian dollar has actually been depreciating since 2017. It bounced back in the later part of 2020. Okay, and now 2021, yes, it has appreciated. Okay, but since 2017, it has depreciated. There will be a chapter on this, on the movement of exchange rate of the value of Australian dollar. We will have a topic on that, and there you will be able to learn why there's a fluctuation here. What is the reason behind it? Okay, so stay tuned, yeah? Now, number 5, the fifth determinant, which is the last one, is the changes in the economic policy. So meaning this is something that government can do. If the question asks you anything about what government can do or what a country can do to improve their competitiveness, the best answer would be from here. Okay, point 1 to 4 that I have covered factors, you are depending on the market demand and supply, you are depending on other countries' movement. Okay, but this one is something that your country can work on, that it can do. Okay, so what government can do to improve their competitiveness is by implementing the right supply side policy. Now, what is supply side policy? It simply means policy that can actually ultimately reduce cost of production. Okay, ultimately reduce cost of production and also increase level of supply. So we are not looking at it from consumers' point of view, but from producers' point of view. What can government do to reduce their cost of production, to encourage them to produce more? Okay, so some of the things that government can do is encourage R&D spending, research and development. How can government encourage that? By giving tax breaks. Tax breaks means tax holiday, tax relief. Okay, so that will actually allow producers to have more funds in hand to increase their production, to reduce their cost of production. Okay, improve skill base. Government can provide trainings, free training to labor or education for future labor. Okay, and that will actually improve their productivity. Okay, improve economic infrastructure in the country. Okay, whatever infrastructure that we have in the country, it should be improved, because when we improve the infrastructure, then producers doesn't have to spend money on on unnecessary thing that is caused by lacking of infrastructure. Okay, for example, road condition. Okay, now if your road condition is good, then producers does not have to spend huge amount of fund on maintaining their vehicle. Okay, not that they don't have to maintain their vehicle, but they don't have to spend huge amount of money because the vehicle has gone through damages due to the uneven road. Okay, so you can help them to reduce their cost. Promote competition between firms. This is very, very important. When there's competition between firms, which means between companies, companies tend to be very careful when they adjust their price. They wouldn't want to increase their price too much that cause them to be less competitive. Okay, so competition can encourage price stability. Okay, reduce tax to stimulate enterprise effort and investment. So this is very important. When government charges lower tax, businesses will be encouraged to expand. Okay, because I'm working so hard to run my business, taking all the risk, and ultimately I have to pay tax. I wouldn't want to do that. But if you reduce tax, okay, I will feel that I am getting more out of the effort that I'm putting in. Okay, encourage sharing of ideas and best practices. This is very important, where government can conduct forum and or seminar and stuff like that, where can in when they can invite producers, businesses, or successful producers, businesses to share their knowledge, share their best practices, so other companies can learn as well on how they actually manage their costs in or their productivity, for example. Reduce protectionist barriers to stimulate competition. And this one, it's related to import. Okay, for example, yeah, import tariff. If government can reduce import tariff, okay, which Australian government has been doing over the years, okay, government reduce tariff, then it will actually encourage more imports to come in. When there's more imports coming in, local producers would have to compete with imports. Okay, local producers will have to compete with imported goods. Again, when there is competition, they'll be very careful with their price. Okay, so one example I can give you is this National Competition Policy Agreement. Australian has been applying this. Australian government has been implementing this, okay, to actually encourage competition in the country. We call it NCP agreement. Okay, this has been there in place. Okay, now so that will be the 5 determinants that we have managed to cover, including the and also the concept of international competitiveness. Okay. Now let me show you one example of ways question, yeah, on international competitiveness. Explain the main determinants of Australia's international competitiveness and describe 2 ways in which competitiveness can be improved over the long term. So there are 2 parts. Okay. The first one is determinants. The second one is what can the authority do to improve competitiveness. Okay, like what I've mentioned just now. If you are looking at it, there are 5 determinants. If the question asks you what government can do, it has to be the last one. Okay, which is this. So each of this can be 2 marks depending on your explanation. Okay, so the rest, you can use it as determinants. In this question, the question tells you they need 2 ways how international competitiveness level can be improved, but they didn't tell you how many determinants they need. Okay, so you have to estimate based on the marks given. 2 ways is 4 marks. Describing 2 ways altogether is 4 marks. 2 times 2. Okay, so it's 4 marks. So the remaining 4 marks will be the determinants. So how many determinants we need for 4 marks? 2 determinants, because again it's 2 points times 2 marks. Okay, so these are the keywords that I have extracted from the WASE exam paper 2019 question 28. Okay, so main determinants again is what we have, all right, and what can the government do, also what we have in the explanation that I have already made. Okay, now so let me show you one sample student answer. The grammar may not be right, okay, but this is sample student answer as it is, okay, where this student actually explained how government can use the supply side policy to improve productivity. This one, the student wrote about trainings, about introducing technology. Okay, by doing that, labor productivity can improve. Okay, when labor productivity improve, it actually reduce the cost of production and therefore increase international competitiveness level. Okay, and an example given is what we have covered just now in year 2010. Our international competitiveness was 24. Don't stop there. I would suggest you continue by saying in 2020 what was the level of international competitiveness. That shows an improvement, and this is partially being contributed by free training that is introduced by the government. Okay, so that's about it for this subtopic 1.3. I hope this video will help you to understand the subtopic better. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.